Greetings, demigods, monsters, and gods alike. Welcome back to the Olympus Report. Get ready to jump back into the world of Percy Jackson with the newest installment. Here's what I thought about Chalice of the Gods. Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods is very much a Percy Jackson book, but in a very different way. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's nothing like the original 5 Percy Jackson books, and it's nothing like the Heroes of Olympus series, but yet Percy is familiar but older. Everything we've come to expect and what makes a Percy Jackson book so special is still there, like the sarcasm, the humor, and the mythology, but it's a very different story than what we've been used to in the past. For the first time, the stakes aren't huge. If Percy doesn't succeed in his mission, well, the world's not gonna end. It's said best here. I'd been on so many quests where the stakes were higher, where if I failed, cities would burn, the world would explode, bell bottoms would make a comeback. This was just retrieving some god's cup. It's just a really uncomplicated story, unlike anything we've seen in, well, the entirety of the Riordanverse. But honestly, it's really refreshing. To be honest, it was kind of like reading a really good fan fiction, and I mean that in the best way possible. Everything that makes a Percy Jackson book is still there from the very first line. Look, I didn't want to be a high school senior. As soon as I read that line, I was instantly transported back in time, and that's what this book does so well. It makes you feel young again. The whole book is like a giant hug from Rick Riordan. In fact, there's a whole section of the book that explains this, the feeling of nostalgia. Now looking at and smelling Heebie-Jeebies glistening plastic pizza, I felt 8 years old again. Wow, I said. Hebe smiled as if she knew exactly what I was thinking. Wonderful, isn't it? Feeling young again. And that's what this book does for us. It makes the reader happy. It reminds us of our childhood, but it also reminds us that it's okay to grow older. And this, readers, is the main theme of the Chalice of the Gods, and it encapsulates it so well. It's constantly bringing up things from past stories, which really ties it in as a new entry of the Riordanverse. I loved hearing references to the original 5 books and also the Heroes of Olympus books. But the book also gives us a glimpse of what future stories may be like. The new characters introduced were fantastic. Euphoria was absolutely hilarious, and I really felt bad for Ganymede. But what truly makes this story special is the characters that we've already come to know and love. The relationships they share bring this book to a whole new level. We get to see how important Percy's friends and family are to him. Since there's no world-ending stakes, we just get to see Percy hang out with his friends and family, and those bonds really shine in the story. Whether it be Percy with his parental figures like Sally, Paul, and Poseidon, or whether it's his relationship with Grover, each one is just as great as the last. For example, you can really feel the bond between this interaction with Percy and Grover. Okay, Grover agreed. Let me go first, though. I might be able to pick out a safe trail through the fields. It used to be a rare day when Grover volunteered to go first through dangerous territory. I was too impressed to argue. Look at my old friend, taking charge and kicking grass. Sometimes I forget he wasn't a scared junior satyr protector anymore, but a scared Cloven Council elder. I guess we'd both grown up a lot. But the absolute best part of this book is Percabeth. I wasn't kidding when I said this whole book is basically read like a fan fiction, and I absolutely loved it. We get to see some of the best Percabeth scenes of any book. After surviving Tartarus together, we get to see just how much Percy and Annabeth mean to each other. And I absolutely lived for it. All Percy wants to do is get into college so he can stay with Annabeth and keep his promise to her to never leave her again. And that's who Percy Jackson is, a hero. But not just because he saves the world, because he's a good person. Now, while this book was fantastic, there was just some things I thought that could have been improved. For one, I think it needed more action. For me personally, there just wasn't enough Riptide action. This is also now the first Percy Jackson book where we don't see Camp Half-Blood, and it's definitely missed. I also wish we got an appearance from more characters from the other books, or at least mentioned them. For example, at the end, I would have loved for Annabeth to mention going to Boston to visit her cousin, as we know that happens in the Magnus Chase series, which takes place after this book. There's also just a couple of inconsistencies within the story. For example, Percy learns that the river god he's looking for teaches a yoga class from Eudora, but yet in the next chapter, Annabeth mentions learning this from the goddess Iris, which never actually happened. Another thing, Percy uses Annabeth's cap of invisibility and makes an observation that using it makes it feel like a weird rash is burning throughout his body. And maybe this is why Annabeth doesn't like using it if she doesn't have to. This makes it sound like this is the first time that Percy's worn the hat, but yet he's worn it several times in the Titan's Curse, and he also wore it in the Battle of the Labyrinth, so this comment really doesn't make much sense. But for me, the biggest inconsistency is the god Apollo and how he's handled in this story. At the end of Heroes of Olympus, Apollo gets zapped by Zeus and doesn't show up again until he lands in a dumpster in Manhattan during the first Trials of Apollo book, approximately 6 months later, after this story. But yet, if you got the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, it came with a copy of recommendation letters written for Percy in the back, and one of them is from the god Apollo. But yet, it would have been impossible for him to write this letter as he's currently missing. Within the letter, he also mentions going to talk to Zeus and saying how it's probably not important, hinting at this is the moment where Zeus would zap him, but that already took place way beforehand, so the timelines just don't add up. I would have liked Apollo to have been mentioned at least once in this story, mentioning how he's missing. I think that would have been a great segue into the Trials of Apollo, and for me, I think it was really a missed opportunity. And finally, I think it was just a tad bit too short. But considering we're getting a whole nother Percy Jackson book coming next September, I'm gonna let this one slide. Overall, I think the Chalice of the Gods is everything we could have wanted and more. Let me know what your favorite part of the book was down below, and if you agree or disagree with anything I said. But until next time, I'll be signing off. So please, Half-Bloods, always remember to stay safe.